Good morning, geography students. We are going to cover two countries today, the last two countries in chapter 21 of Northern Africa. We're going to be talking about Libya and Egypt, but I don't know that I'll be able to finish the slides today. I'm hoping to get very close, but there are 20 slides, and to do 20 slides in 15 minutes will be a huge accomplishment. I will post these slides if they are. I'll double check and make sure. If they're not already posted, I will post them because the slides for chapter 21 came in two sections. Okay, so this is the area we've been talking about. Last week we finished talking about Western Sahara, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia up here in the corner. Center corner, if that's such a thing. But today you see on the far right side, we're going to be talking about the countries of Libya and Egypt. All right, so Libya and Egypt kind of serve as a transitional area between Africa and the Middle East. They have a lot in common with the Middle East, more so even than Africa, but they're located on the African continent. These are the two most influential North African countries. They play a very important role in world politics. And some of the city names we're going to mention today, I hope sound familiar to you because you've heard them in the news. But some of them you will have to learn about in future history classes. Let's start with Libya. Libya got its independence from Italy in 1951. That is shortly after World War II ended. But almost right away, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi overthrew the new king. Not right away, I guess 14 years. Overthrew the king, and he established a dictatorship in Libya. He was a horrible dictator, very cruel. He died in 2011, so he ruled the country for, 42 years. But he died during a civil war that erupted in what we call today Arab Spring, the uprising in various Arab countries that called for the ends of what they had known and the attempt at democracy. Gaddafi was no friend of America. He was very belligerent and hostile to all things democratic. Like other North African countries, Libya, again, it lies between Tunisia and Egypt, is primarily desert. Doesn't really have much besides desert. Up at the very north, it has the Gulf of Sidra, which extends south into the center of Libya, has a deep gulf there. The western coast is known as Tripolitania, I guess. Its capital is Tripoli. Capital of Libya is Tripoli, and it is the largest city in Libya. It is also hopefully a name you recognize if you've ever heard the Marine Corps hymn. The Marine Corps hymn goes from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, and Tripoli is where that is talking about. It is the capital, the largest city, and yes, one of the Marine Corps' first battles was fought off the shores of Tripoli. Okay, so the eastern half of Libya, the side closer to Egypt, is mostly barren desert. Um, Not even the desert nomads want to go there. It is so very dry and just miserable. Not very many oases. This is called the Libyan Desert, and it extends down into the country of South Sudan that we studied several chapters ago. There is oil there, however. Okay. So the state religion of Libya is Sunni Islam. These are the more violent Islamic followers. That is 97% of the people. They do claim to allow Christianity. They're tolerated is what your book calls it. But those that do meet have to meet in secret because they risk being turned over to the authorities. Okay, this is Egypt, and I love this satellite picture because it really shows you what the Nile River does for Egypt. Um, the green is the Nile. That's all there is to it, really. There is nothing else that brings anything out of the desert other than the Nile River. The rest of it, just cold desert. Well, hot desert. Egypt is one of the world's oldest countries. Very fascinating. It still thrives today along the Nile River. As we can trace its history back as much as to 2700 BC, where it was united as a state under one ruler. We all hopefully know that it is also a biblical country. Abraham went there, Isaac went to Egypt, and of course the children of Israel were captive in Egypt for a long time, and that we'll study to a great deal of to a great extent in world history. It's one of the first things we look at. So when the Israeli people went to Egypt and they were held captive there, they were in that region that is green there at the top. It's called Goshen. It is in the Nile Delta, but they were sheep herders, and that is where they lived. They needed, grass to feed the sheep. So it has been a united country for many, many years. The Ottoman Turks stepped in and controlled it or somewhere around 1517 until 1805. And then a man named Muhammad Ali, not the famous boxer, but the ruler of Egypt, ushered in the modernization of Egypt, where he began building modern buildings, including the city of Cairo. He also oversaw the completion of the Suez Canal in 1869, although a good deal of that work was done by the British. And the British stepped in and kind of took control during the completion of the canal, and they were there until 1922. They had a lot of interest in staying there, and even during World War II, the Egyptians were helped by the British, and the British maintained a little bit of control in the area to help keep them from falling into Nazi hands. In the modern era, Gamal Abdel Nasser, was one of Egypt's best and most revered leaders. He was loved by all of the people there, although the rest of the world wasn't all that crazy about him because some of his policies were a little bit out there. But and he was not always friendly to the rest of the world, but he did a good job for Egypt. Okay. After Nasser passed away, and he, I think, died of natural causes, a man named Anwar Sadat succeeded him in 1970 and began reversing many of his policies. One of the most important things he reversed, though, was his Sadat tried to make friends with Egypt. Not with Egypt. That would be stupid. With Israel. Sorry, went the wrong way. He ended up signing in 1977 under with the help of our president Jimmy Carter. Sadat signed the Camp David Accords with Israel's prime minister, and basically that meant that Egypt was recognizing Israel's right to exist, which had never happened before. They'd even fought wars over it. One war in particular called the Six-Day War, in which Israel overran Egypt and threw them out of the Sinai Peninsula in like 6 days. It was really quite incredible. But the state religion of Egypt is again Muslim. It's Islam, and 87% of the population is Muslim. Another portion of they generally do tolerate Christianity, but persecution is on the rise in Egypt. A good portion of the population in Egypt is what is called Coptic Christian. Coptic Christianity claims to have been founded by the Apostle Mark, who wrote the second epistle, the second gospel, excuse me. But if it was indeed founded by Mark, it has strayed greatly from the way he originally taught Christianity to them. Um, Coptic Christianity is very similar to Catholicism or Eastern Orthodoxy. The Eastern Orthodoxy would be like Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox. So it is very ritualistic, it's very formal, and they do not believe that Christ was both all God and all man. They believe that he was mixed, God and man, not two distinct um, not persons, but two distinct spirits within one body. He was mixed. So he couldn't have been sinless at that point, and that is absolutely not true. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Nile River. It is the lifeblood of Egypt. If it weren't for the Nile, Egypt would not exist the way it does now. It is the longest river in the world. It's 4,160 miles long. And just for fun, I tried to figure out what else was about that length. And that is about the distance from Atlanta, Georgia to Fairbanks, Alaska. Okay? Just about that distance. So that is how long it is. Until the early 20th century, the Nile flooded every year, and it brought with it silt that deposited in that Nile basin, that fan out that you see at the end, the delta region. And that new silt that's like getting fresh dirt every year made that Nile delta the best place to grow anything. But they've dammed the river further south, but really further up, and so it doesn't do that anymore. This picture was taken at the Valley of the Kings. That's talked about in your book. But the dam I'm talking about is the Aswan High Dam. It ended the flooding lower down the river, but in the process, it brought electricity, and it also brings fertile soil to and irrigation to hundreds and hundreds of miles and acres of land further up. So it's doing a good thing, even though the silt isn't going downriver anymore. It also, because of the Aswan High Dam, they were able to complete Lake Nasser, a reservoir behind the dam that stretches down into Sudan, 340 miles of long lake that is able to give, as I said, irrigation and other things to people further up. All right, I think I'm going to need to stop here. We will pick up here tomorrow and finish up just this section. We're going to go on to Australia and New Zealand for the rest of the week. We are not stopping to have a test on this chapter. That will come as part of the semester exam. Okay, so there we go. Enjoy your day.